Leviathan Book 1, Nod. Act 1, The Codex in the Cloud. Chapter 2, The Shadow of Eden. A low wind rolls across the sky, clouds stretching in long veins of charcoal and silver. We drift through the high sky, down into a sea of stars, dipping slowly through the canopy of trees. The wind hushes into leaves. Below, a dirt path winds between wooden cottages, their crooked silhouettes hunched against the moonlight. Soft rain glimmers like falling ash across the stalks of a wheat field, half-harvested, slick with dew. No walls, just open fields and the lull of frogs in the wet, dark earth. A village lay nestled where the twin rivers forked and clawed their way toward the sea. A place out of sync with the rest of the world. Voiceover, hushed and slow. There are places where time folds in on itself, where floods rewrite the land faster than maps can trace, where the stars above feel older than the myths below. And here, where the marshes swallow root and sky alike, sits a village half remembered, half forgotten, a place that shouldn't be, but endures anyway. Some say it was founded by exiles. Others claim it was never founded at all, just discovered, already waiting. This is Nod, and this is where it begins. Rain had stopped by dawn. Mist still clung low to the soil, brushing over straw roofs and sagging shutters. Villagers were already out. A boy dragged a wooden crate toward the baker. A woman swept the steps of the butcher's stall. Smoke coiled from chimneys, thin and gray. A pair of guards stood by the central path. One older, broad-shouldered, with a long black and gray beard tucked into the fur collar of his heavy black cloak. The other younger, lean-built and restless, adjusting his worn leather straps with a frown of quiet frustration. The older Latham bore the seasoned weight of a veteran, the creases of battle etched deep into his face, a thick cloak draped over weather-worn leather armor, and dark hair streaked with age cascading over his shoulders. A steel-buckled longsword hung at his hip, mostly for show now. His voice was sharper than his blade these days. Beside him, Garlin looked barely past 17. His wild blue hair clung to his forehead, his sharp eyes betraying the discipline he tried to project beneath the weight of his oversized cloak. Though he stood tall, there was still something unfinished in his gait. His boots were caked in dried mud, his gloves too loose on the fingers, and his size too frequent for someone pretending to be a hardened swordsman. They walked together through the heart of the village, the cobbled path slick with last night's rain. Ahead, a thick plume of smoke coiled from the blacksmith's chimney, stretching across the thatched rooftops as the evening darkened into a bruised sky. Dawn crept across the crooked rooftops of the village, casting long shadows across the muddied road. The houses, timber-framed with steep thatch roofs, lined the path like quiet watchers. Candlelight flickered in a few upper windows, where children still heading in for the night and dinner pots hissed. Smoke rose steadily from the far end of the road, thicker than usual, wafting from the blacksmith's wide chimney like a dark tree root twisting into the sky. The older of the two men, Latham, walked slow, chewing noisily on a thick heel of bread stacked with leftover ham. His boots splashed softly through the damp mud as he took another bite and wiped his mouth with the back of his glove. "You know you shouldn't be eating right now," Garlin muttered, arms crossed, his armor buckled too tightly over his chest. Latham grinned through his last chew. "My wife made it. I dare you to waste a single bite and see what happens." He nodded down to the folded cloth bundle under his belt. "She made some for you too, boy. Want me to tell her you turned it down?" Garlin flinched and looked away, face stiffening. That was answer enough. Latham let out a rough laugh, elbowing him. "You've learned to fear her too, I see." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to. Your silence says it for you. Your women's always right. That's my advice to you." Garlin shook his head. "It's not about her. It's just, we shouldn't eat at the start of the watch. I'll eat at break." "You and your schedules," Latham muttered, licking a bit of meat off his thumb. They reached the bend just as the wind picked up. A gust rolled down the path and tugged at their cloaks. Latham paused to glance toward the sky, where plumes of smoke curled like clouds from the blacksmith's chimney. A warm metallic tang hung heavy in the air. Latham tilted his head. They've got those forges roaring early today. Garlin sniffed the wind, frowning. Smells like rain. Smells like iron and wet horsehair to me. Garlin pointed toward the workshop. The dwarves have been down there lately, teaching the smiths from the southern pass. Latham's eyes lit. Then it's only a matter of time before they build a distillery. You ever had dwarven liquor? Nectar of the gods, they say. On a mission in my younger years, I had a young dwarven lass treat me to some. It nearly blinded me. Worth it through. I'll stick with cider. You should too. I'll tell your wife next time, Garlin muttered. You think she'd care what my rushed old blade slab into decades ago? Latham laughed. Your loss, I guess. The rain began soft, barely more than mist. The road darkened, puddles forming between wagon ruts and hoofprints. As they passed the blacksmith's shop, glowing embers flickered behind the slatted windows. Hammering had already begun, dull thuds echoing behind wooden walls. Latham pulled his cloak tighter. Elves, too, he said, nudging Garlin again. We've had some staying in the lower quarter. Graceful things, especially their women. Garlin looked away, silent. Latham smirked. Ah, that's right. Your eyes are already claimed, aren't they? He waited. When Garlin didn't answer, Latham added with a mock whisper, That blue-haired girl. Melanie, wasn't it? The summoner girl? Garlin's face flushed. She prefers Mel. Sure she does. You're the only one I've ever heard call her that. She's with Master Kareth today. Should be practicing now. Latham made a noise. Old bastard's still breathing then. Garlin nodded awkwardly. Your hatred hasn't stopped his heart yet, but I think she's already surpassed him. Last week she made her first a full familiars pack. Spirit wolves, a whole pack of them. Latham's brows lifted. You don't say? Yes, Mel could summon well before, but now she's on a different level. Latham whistled low. And here I thought you were still that scrawny kid I found in the forest, clutching a sword bigger than your body. Garlin cracked a smile. You can't beat me anymore. I taught you everything you know, you little brat. Latham laughed again, hearty and loud. Picking on your elders now, you should be ashamed of yourself. The rain picked up, beating along their shoulders as they turned another bend. The smell of firewood, wet soil, and distant rain mingled with the lingering scent of metal and iron. Mud sucked at their boots. The torches that had lit the path earlier were dimming now, their flames spitting against the wind. The road ahead curved slightly uphill, leading toward the heart of Nod's growing square. Come on, Latham said, stuffing the rest of his bread into his mouth. Still a few corners left to check before we go stand at our post. They moved on, cloaked in rain and memory, as the village breathed around them. Hey, Garlin, you hear they're saying the floods took out the paths near the southern marshes again? Latham asked, spitting into the wet road. Garlin nodded. The Tigris is up past the marker stone. That's why most caravans didn't make it through. They even replaced the horses with oxen, and they still had trouble. On top of that, beast has been spotted down there. I guess the river brought them along with it. Why are there caravans trying to go through the marshes this time of year? Latham raised a brow. The only ones who could make it around those paths are elves and beastkins. Garlin smirked, but his voice was quiet. Might have been mixed. They may have had some people from the wetland tribe leading it. I hear a wolf lichen was on one of those caravans headed here. Latham grunted. I've been hearing there's remnants of Sumer somewhere in the northern east edge of the forest where the desert begins. Garlin shrugged. I haven't heard anything. Mel said she knows someone who found a scroll with old Sumer glyphs. If you ask her, she will tell Sumer never fell and still out there. Oh ho, Latham grinned. You've talked to Melanie, huh? Garlin flushed and looked away. Shut it, old man. More villagers were gathering, men in robes stitched with cross embroidery, women selling honeyed olives, a foreigner bartering scrolls marked with strange alphabets. Rumors spread faster than fire in dry wheat. Ever hear of a land past the northern mountains? A vendor muttered to a passing guard. Takes months to reach. Empire of Jade, they say. Born of a dragon. Someone else chimed in from behind the spice cart. I heard there's desert past the floodwoods, sand so bright it blinds you. Trader in Babylon's full of stories. A man from the south claimed to have come from there. Latham scratched his chin. So the world keeps finding us, but we never seem to find the world. Garlin gestured to the crowd. They find their way here, like always. A hush fell as a breeze rolled down from the hills. Latham turned first, still chewing the last bite of ham. Someone's coming. Garlin froze beside him, standing just off the main path where the fence met the wheat fields. His blue hair flicked in the wind, eyes narrowing as he scanned the distant tree line. The road was muddy, slick from rain, reflecting the torches flickering near the village doors. At the edge of the forest, two cloaked figures stepped from the underbrush, framed by moonlight and framed like ghosts. They walked with no hurry, no fear. The villagers began to gather behind Latham and Garlin, one by one. Farmers, stonecutters, and fishmongers, each stepping cautiously into the path, some holding tools, others hiding behind doors. Garlin didn't wait. He lifted a hand, and in a low pulse of light, his sword manifested from the air. As he gripped its hilt, but with force, the blade shimmered along the edges with angular and ornate. The heavy hilt guard gleamed with geometric gold tracings, and blue ether flickered like fire between the runes carved down the fuller. Latham straightened beside him but didn't draw. Easy now, lad. Garlin stepped forward, the blade humming low in his grip. From the mist, the pair emerged, closer now. The man walked ahead, tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 18, though the steadiness of his demeanor betrayed a soul far older. His hair was pale silver white, tousled in uneven waves down to his collar. Inked scripture wrapped down his exposed arms. He walked with unhurried breath beneath a travel-worn linen wrap tied at the waist. There was no sword on him, no armor, just himself. His eyes met Garlin's, the glance to his sword. In that moment, the blade in Garlin's hand trembled. A pulse of something deep, warm like starlight but heavier, shivered through the air. The sword's energy flickered, dimmed, and vanished, dispersed. Garlin gasped, his fingers grasping at its hilt. The silver-haired man didn't speak, but a faint smile touched his lips, and just for a moment, his eyes gleamed a bright, unnatural yellow, like sunlight seen through glass. Then they dimmed, as if nothing had happened. Garlin took a step back. He didn't speak either, just leaned the sword next to him against the fence. The chill of the wet wood grounded him. Latham exhaled slowly, arms crossed. You felt that, right? That boy's stronger than both of us together, he muttered, half in disbelief. The villagers said nothing at first, just stared. Then came the woman. She walked behind the silver-haired man, her robe torn near the hem, her feet bare against the dirt. Her hair, jet black and glistening with river mist, curled over her shoulders in thick, tangled locks. Eyes like dusk. She moved with the tired grace of someone who had known beauty, sorrow, and defiance in equal measure. They both kept walking, past the fields, past the fence, toward the gathering crowd now parting before them. Garlin whispered, "Who the hell are they?" Latham didn't answer. He was still watching the man's back. Then his eyes turned towards the young woman next to him. Her skin shimmered in the morning mist, a soft amber gold hue, chestnut curls. She said nothing, only looked. Eyes the color of honeyed bronze scanned the village with quiet caution, like a creature used to being watched, and never surprised when it was. Latham clenched his sword's hilt and his belt out of instinct. "They walk through that forest?" he whispered. "She's too beautiful to be a normal human girl," he muttered. "He doesn't look like he has any weapons, and she doesn't look like a mage or anything. But yet they came from the direction of the Black Mountain." Garlin looked again. He felt it too. The wrongness. The soil near that mountain was corrupted, causing demonic beasts to appear. They chased hunters out of that part of forest for years. Nothing human came from there. But now, these two walked through that part of the forest without any worries. The young man lifted a hand in quiet greeting. "I am Adam of Eden. I do apologize if we startled you all," he said, voice steady as he looked at the two guards on the fence. "I'm Eve," the girl said beside him, "also from Eden." A ripple of gas broke behind them. Villagers had begun to gather, pulled by the quiet gravity of the moment. Eden? Someone whispered. Is that a city? A region past the mountains? I've never heard of it. Latham narrowed his eyes. You came from the Black Mountain? Adam simply turned his chin and pointed. Toward the hills, toward the broken ridges behind the cursed forest. Lethan swore under his breath. The elders arrived not long after, cloaks hurriedly thrown over tunics, footsteps in the mud. One of them held a staff that had once been ceremonial, now little more than a walking stick. Children peeked from behind their parents' legs. Garlin stood near the back, craning his neck through the shifting bodies. He caught a glimpse of a woman, the huntsman's wife, known to be quiet and tired-eyed. Melanie's mother. She moved stiffly, eyes locked on the figures at the forest's edge. But there was no sign of Melanie beside her. He blinked, puzzled. She was always with her mother at public gatherings. Just then, a faint creaking sound turned his head, a door swinging open behind a crooked stall, not far from the herb shed and the dye vats. An old mud brick home leaned crooked against the slope, its walls swallowed by creeping moss and shed bones. The door opened wide and out stepped Melanie. She paused on the threshold, her sandals caught in the doorway behind her. Her breath steamed faintly in the night air. Her long blue hair hung loose and wild down her shoulders, tangled in strands of dried sweat. The hem of her tunic clung to her skin, the neckline fallen askew. Her lower lip looked dry and her gown was twisted high on one side, caught around the band of her thigh. Behind her, the old summoner Kareth emerged with a grunt, stooped and muttering, his fingers still smudged with chalked ink. He leaned on the doorframe, robes hastily belted and half open at the chest, blinking slowly. He said nothing. 6 wolf-like hounds stepped into the light behind him. Massive, bristle-furred beasts, their hides thick like undergrowth, and their eyes faintly aglow. But they did not move like summoned creatures. They did not fan out in search or fall into rank. Instead, they swarmed around their master. Their bodies rubbed against Melanie's legs and hips, snouts sniffing the folds of her tunic, nudging her. One of them licked her knee and back. Another nuzzled the back of her thigh. Then they let out a whining breath as it circled her twice before settling close behind. They moved around her not with the deference of summons to their master, but it looked of a packmate's recognizing a female member. Her arms remained relaxed at her sides, and though her eyes were unfocused, even when one spirit wolf rose on its haunches to lick her cheek, pawing briefly at her cloak. Beneath the fabric, the faintest glimpse of red welts shimmered across her upper back. Too thin to be wounds, too high to be accidental. When another hound pressed its nose along her ribcage and growled, she flinched, not in fear, but restraint. Her breath hitched, and her hands briefly curled, then fell open again. Kareth took a single step forward and was met with a unified snarl. One of them bared its teeth, the others freezing mid-motion until he stepped back into shadow. The wolf didn't seem to see her completely as a master. They seemed to almost control her, weaving around her with the possessive awareness. Not bound by spell, but by something deeper. Then, Kareth's eyes caught something strange. Faintly glowing, just beneath the eyelids of the wolves, was a shared mark, a star-shaped rune pulsing faintly with blue ether. Each one bore it, low on their gaze like a spiritual watermark. The mark of a summoner's bond, proof of ownership, of dominion. Kareth frowned, then turned to Melanie. You did it, he muttered, voice tight with awe. You've finally bonded them, all of them. The mark proves it. Melanie blinked, slow and glassy. The mark? Kareth stepped closer, more cautious now. Your hand, he said, lifting his own with a gesture. Look. She raised her palm. Faintly etched in an ethereal glow, a 5-pointed star shimmered on the flesh between her thumb and wrist. Delicate, intricate. Not just a summoner's sigil, but a control seal. A rare confirmation that a summoner had full spiritual and physical dominance over their summoner and familiar pack. You're no apprentice anymore, Kareth whispered. This bond goes deeper than summoning magic now. Their spirits are tied to yours. Their abilities and powers are now yours to use as well. His voice dipped lower. It also means you can not only call them, but command them, enhance them as you both grow. One of the wolves, a massive black-furred male, stepped forward. He towered slightly over the others, eyes burning brighter, more with power. His breath steamed against the air. He seemed a bit more intelligent, intentional. Kareth's tone shifted. That's the alpha. Melanie's gaze flicked toward the beast as it circled behind her. He responds only to strength, Kareth continued. Right now, he's a base-class spirit, tethered to this world through your will. But as your power grows, so will he. He could evolve, a heavenly-class spirit, even divine if fate allows it. But then he saw it. There, on the alpha's forehead, between its dark brows, was the same star-shaped sigil, glowing faintly, not like the others, not subtle, not passive. It pulsed once, in rhythm with the mark on Melanie's palm. Kareth went still. That mark. He wasn't supposed to have to that one. It wasn't hers upon him. It was his, mimicking hers, mirroring it. Kareth's lips parted. A sudden pressure gripped his chest. The alpha turned its head slightly, and for a moment, Kareth swore it glared at him. Not as a beast, but as someone telling another to keep their mouth shut. The old master summoner's mouth opened to speak, but no words came. The silence around them had grown too thick. Melanie stepped forward. Thank you for the lesson, Master Kareth, she said gently. Polite, distant. Kareth tried to answer, but his gaze drifted toward her eyes and stopped cold. Just beyond her pupils, barely visible in the faint firelight, a shape shimmered behind her irises. The star rune, etched into the glass of her gaze, like an echo of the wolves. The same mark that had shown her control over them, now reflecting back at her. For the briefest instant, it wasn't clear who controlled whom. She turned, her movements fluid but eerily weightless. As she slipped into the crowd, the wolves followed, not in formation, not in deference, but like shadows magnetized to their source. Their sides brushed her hips, their snouts nosed the folds of her tunic, one letting out a deep, pleased exhale as it nuzzled the back of her thigh. One villager glanced their way, then looked quickly away. No one else noticed. Kareth remained frozen, his hand hovering near his belt, staring at the retreating girl. Her blue hair moved like water. Her step never faltered. She didn't glance back. The sigil in her eyes faded like a breath on glass. The alpha didn't look away, not once. The square had erupted in quiet murmurs. All eyes were drawn to the couple emerging from the tree line. The man with ash-pale skin and silver lashes. The woman whose gaze shimmered like flame. The children pointed, the elders whispered. Even the guards at the perimeter lowered their spears, awestruck. Garlin, by instinct, turned his head once more. He saw her. Just for a second. Melanie was slipping into the crowd, her hair wild, her cheeks flushed, her gaze half-lidded. There was a slow, almost dreamlike drag to her limbs, as if her body no longer answered only to herself. Their eyes met. Then she vanished. The wolves followed her like living shadows, brushing her sides, nipping at her ankles, pressing against her calves with fierce devotion. They did not guard her. It almost looked like claiming. One of them paused, sniffed at a streak along the back of her leg, and let out a deep, satisfied growl. Not even the wind dared interrupt to separate them. A silence fell again as the elders stepped forward. Villagers watched the elders speak to him, watched the circle tighten around him like a knot being pulled. Words exchanged, hands shaken, and something unspoken left hanging in the air. Then Adam walked, quietly, deliberately, past the heart of the village, beyond the stone wells and crooked fences, to the tree line. And there, without ceremony, he began to build.